Breaker, this is Striker Star 19. I'm here to give you the scoop on Wonder Woman 1984, which I could barely say without chuckling a bit, not because it was particularly terrible, but this film kind of made me wonder if I'm just wonder. It made me think that I'm just totally losing touch because this is like the second film in recent memory I can think of that I saw and just wondered if like I'm just totally losing my mind because it wasn't even terrible or anything. I just found it so bizarre and like in the way that I found Frozen 2 bizarre. I was so like I don't know if I ever said this on this channel or who knows me who's heard me say this. I walked out of Frozen 2 with no idea what I just watched. And this isn't the same feeling. Like I could summarize this movie in a way I could not summarize Frozen 2, but oh, I found it just so thematically I could not. I could tell you what happened. I couldn't really tell you why because that's what I'm getting at. And it does things well, and I didn't hate it. But boy, is it strange. When this movie hit HBO Max, I saw a lot of people reacting very venomously. They really turned on it, which surprised me a bit. But maybe not so much because I think we're all in a bit of superhero fatigue. But yeah, because I really like the first Wonder Woman. I think a lot of people do as well. It just surprised me that zeitgeist seemed to just switch with this movie. And as far as I know, it has a lot to do with politics, that this film has some bad politics that a lot of that, we're getting to be on the up and up with superhero movies. I'm personally not going to touch that just because I don't feel super informed, but I'd be remiss not to mention it. And I think some of Gal Gadot's own real life politics aren't uninvolved in that matter. But again, just won't really. I didn't really look into it just because I wanted to approach this just as unfiltered as I could for the movie itself. And even then, it was still just a very bizarre experience. Yeah, so I guess my chief complaint with this movie is that it does not feel like a Wonder Woman story. This doesn't strike me as a story that Wonder Woman would be the vehicle to tell. In that the plot basically revolves around this magic wishing rock, I guess, and the various characters involved indulge their desires and make wishes with the rock, and of course it's very monkey's paw. And Wonder Woman gets involved in this, and I think that's just a bizarre character to use in a story like this, because Wonder Woman as a character never once struck me as being particularly wistful or having strong desires or something she wants to undo. That so her wish in this film is to bring back Steve Trevor. That I believe that's his name. Her love interest from the last movie, and from there, it's kind of just a lot of be careful what you wish for, and you can't take shortcuts, so to speak. This film opens with a flashback of Diana as a little girl. She's like 8 years old, and she's in this gladiatorial contest with the other Themyscirans, and she gets called out because she took a shortcut. Like, I think she fell off her horse, so she kind of took an easy out on the track. It was a little hard to track, honestly, and I believe it's her mother tells her, you can't just take shortcuts in life. Nothing is wrought from lies, something like that. And that's supposed to be kind of the setup that thematically leads into everyone making wishes. That's their shortcut. I guess the thing is, the movie kind of dictates, because what basically happens is a cult, any group of people or society or cultures that abuses this wishing rock uh, basically is prone to disaster from everyone granting their wishes. Like the last country group of people that used the wishing rock got wiped off the face of the earth. There's like one survivor who tells them this. So Diana realizes everyone has to renounce their wishes, and she does the same. She loses Steve Trevor, very, very sad. I guess what comes to mind in that regard is that the movie kind of just tells her that she can't have Steve Trevor. So there's no there's no real downside to her having Steve Trevor back. Not one that was exceptionally clear to me. They play up a lot when you make a wish, you have to give something in return. And as far as I could tell, Diana didn't lose much from having Steve Trevor. Maybe that's just a lapse in my own attention, but it did largely seem to me that the folly of using the wishing rock was in of itself the folly of losing the wishing rock. Uh, so that kind of sucks as far as storytelling goes. And again, I don't have a problem with her missing her boyfriend, reasonable, but it just doesn't. Wonder Woman doesn't strike me as a character who's particularly rooted in her past. She is like immortal and she's lived for a long, long time because she's made of clay and stuff. But this almost strikes me more as it'd work better as like a Batman or a Superman story, which it kind of is, with the Black Mercy, sometimes wielded by Mongol, which is that big parasitic plant thing that clings to your chest and puts you in a trance where you live out your greatest fantasy. And it attaches to Superman, and he imagines he's back on Krypton. And it attaches to Batman, he imagines he has his parents back. So it feels like that story, but applied to a character who I just don't really think thematically fits in because I just never thought of like when I think of Diana, I never think of oh she wants her boyfriend back. Again, I think that's reasonable for her character. I just don't understand why that has to be the drive of this entire movie. Um, Especially like given, and I've seen a lot of people criticize, it's less feminist that she has to rely on her boyfriend, that she like misses her boyfriend so much. Excuse me. I don't have that problem with it. Like, I don't disagree, but I don't feel that's so much the issue, so much as I just don't really see how it suits Diana as a character, regardless of her being a woman or her femininity and gender. So that's why I just thought it was a very I just don't really. I guess it kind of comes back around to my mentality that it just feels as though because movies are getting to be such big franchise things that we wait 4 years for a sequel and it just feels like here's another episode of the Wonder Woman saga. Like we just got this kind of random adventure from her because she lived this long, long life, and now she's in the 80s. Uh, and I had the same problem with like Incredibles 2 and like I guess a handful of Marvel. Marvel, for all I'm willing to talk shit, does a pretty good job at making each movie pretty portentous. I think like the worst in that regard is probably like Ant-Man and the Wasp, where they go through this whole unrelated adventure to get across one plot point that's relevant to Endgame. Um, yeah. So this felt like I don't understand why we needed this movie to understand Diana in Justice League or in her future appearances. This doesn't seem to set up much. It just seems like if this were a Wonder Woman TV show, it'd be a fine if forgettable middle of the season episode, which I think is just a big issue. And I think that's just very portentous of that issue I'm having, where we wait lots and lots of years for Wonder Woman 2. I say lots and lots. I think it's been like 4 years. That's still a decent amount of time, and it's just like this random episode of her life from the 80s when she's lived decades and decades, and it feels kind of detached from the first one in tone and in narrative, and I just wasn't crazy about it. As far as other characters go, the villain handling in this film is the other part where I'm like, what was going on quite? Because I was so excited that when I heard the villain was going to be the cheetah. I think Cheetah's a really cool villain, and I think she kind of goes underutilized because people are like, well, okay, Cat Lady, sure, she can barely even hold a candle to Wonder Woman. She's just kind of there. I think Cheetah's a genuinely underrated character. I think she's super cool. So I have to like So I'm just not really sure. I lost my train of thought a bit. I'm sorry. And for the most part in this movie, she's probably the best part of it, to be honest. I think the best parts of this movie are Kristen Wiig as the cheetah, and she when she gets the she's this very demure, by spectacled scientist type. A lot of people have been drawing comparisons to like Michelle Pfeiffer Catwoman and Uma Thurman Poison Ivy and a lot of other movies. And when she gets the wish, she sees the wishing rock and wishes that she could be confident like Diana. Or no, she phrases it, I wish I was like Diana. Just uh full broad stroke. So she becomes confident and she kind of changes up how she carries herself, becomes much more popular, and also finds that she has developed Diana's super strength. So, and well, and you maybe wonder, so why do they start fighting? When Wonder Woman is telling everyone we gotta renounce our wishes, she's like, I'm not going back to how I was. And she can use her even strength to be on even footing with Diana. And I think that ultimately works. Again, that's like some of the best parts of this movie. There's this point where, Barbara, that's the cheetah's real name, I should say. Barbara finds out she has her super strength, so she just gets in her 80s workout gear, which is one of my favorite aesthetics ever, just very 1984, and just hits the gym and puts everyone else to shame. She's like, Can I really? And she's just like, benching a ton. She's doing awesome. She's cool. I really liked her in this movie. I guess the problem is that once she goes full supervillain, she barely gets screen time, of course. I say that like it's at all hard to see coming. And like I think DC see let me get to because there's two villains in this movie. There's the cheetah. So and there's also Maxwell Lord, which is a bizarre choice. Maxwell Lord, I consider him like the Rolodex of evil DC business guys. It's like, oh, we need a corrupt businessman. It'll be Maxwell Lord, or it'll be Simon Stagg, who's also in this movie briefly, or it might be like Bruno Mannheim. If it's not Lex Luthor, if we need someone less portentous, it'll be like one of those names I can count on my left hand. So, and to his credit, he's played by Pedro Pascal, Mandalorian, and Oberyn. He's blowing up lately. He does awesome. I think he actually, it really, actually, well, towards the beginning, when he gets to have a lot of fun as Maxwell Lord, he's knocking it out of the park. He's a narcissist. He's an egomaniac. He like. When people don't recognize him in public, he imitates his commercial, and there's this great bit where he does that for Diana, who doesn't own a television, and she just like blank stares him. Here's what's weird about Maxwell Lord, though, is that he's a bigger villain than the cheetah, ultimately. They decided Maxwell Lord would be the more focal point of the conflict, which is such a bit. I've never been like, I want a Wonder Woman movie where Maxwell Lord is the pivotal threat. No way. Honestly, like Cheetah gets brushed aside for him. And I mean, he's okay. I guess again, he's not really bad so much as he is like really strange. Like again, I just think they took this like relatively just not I'm trying to find the right words. I just never would have attached this story to Maxwell Lord of all people again. And I guess I like that they took a big swing. It takes some swings. That's why I don't really hate it. But at the same time, it's like I kind of was looking forward to just a Wonder Woman versus Cheetah conflict. And I think you could have made that work, but Maxwell Lord seems to just drive this whole thing. What happens with Maxwell is he gets the wishing rock, and I'm like, oh, he's gonna wish for more money because his empire is falling apart, and he's like, I want to be the wishing rock, and I think I audibly said what as I was watching this in my room, and now people can make wishes with him. And we cut to Maxwell Lord now and then. He's just going up to random people and kind of coercing them into making wishes he wants. He's like, oh, but don't you wish my company was doing better? And Simon Stagg is like, yeah, I guess. And it happens. And it's like, it's stuff like that. Like, I think it's so bizarrely thought out. It's like, okay, he's the wishing rock now, and he's just going around granting wishes. It's like, but like, and it's tearing the world apart because everyone is just getting their way, and it's like in the most literal monkey paw fashion. And this is where the film gets just really surreal because everyone's just getting their wish. He's screwing everybody over, monkey's paw style, and the whole world is just falling apart. Like that's the best way I can describe the pivotal thing Wonder Woman is fighting, is that she's walking through the streets and everyone's just miserable because of their own hard to glean wishes. And it's hard to talk out because it's just kind of strange. I'm like, okay, I just never been like, and I say this just from like a perspective of that's a weird thing to put in a movie that Wonder Woman has to fight against the might of a billion corrupted wishes. I hate to be like, oh, this is how, like, I'm not trying to be like, Wonder Woman can only do one thing, and that's fight a supervillain. But that's a really weird thing to just like build a whole super movie around. I feel a superhero movie around. And again, it's different, but I don't think that necessarily makes it all that good. Maxwell Lord is like getting all decrepit and pale and gaunt because he's expelling so much personal energy to make these wishes, and he has a plan that he's going to broadcast himself so everyone makes a wish, and he can just like, and because the wishing stone takes something to grant it, he's going to replace his damaged body because he's just like stressed and whelmed himself to this point. So he's basically going to destroy the world, giving everyone exactly what they want, but in a genie way. So that's what's going on. I guess it's just like, again, if you did this conflict with like Batman, I think that'd be cool. Like he makes a wish to bring back his parents, and I could see that applied to him, to have that willpower to give up that thing that defines him so strongly. Whereas Wonder Woman in particular, I've never just viewed as, oh, she's so attached to her boyfriend, and that would be a strong conflict for her to give that up. I could see her being a paragon of willpower, but I feel like the whole idea is that because she's very, very old, despite not really physically aging, she just has that a more emotional maturity than Batman and Superman, who I could see like having a struggle to give into that selfishness because they're just they have some. They're the whole point of those characters is they also have those strong desires that they have to conflict with. So that's what's kind of going on there. It's around this point that the cheetah Barbara makes another wish to become an apex predator. I think how it works is she made her first wish on the rock itself, then Maxwell Lord becomes the rock. Right? And she can make another wish with him. She says, I want to be an apex predator. And that's what turns her into more directly the cheetah with the fur and the claws. She takes on some like aesthetic hints of that when she's just strong Barbara, basically. But this is the point where she gets to be full cheetah. And this is another actually really cool bit. She fights Diana as the full-on cheetah, and I love the way she looks. It got a little flack, but I think like whenever we see a somehow photorealistic or live-action cheetah, which is really just this and Injustice, she gets like what almost looks like a makeup snout that I could see some people not liking, but kind of invokes Broadway cats to me, and I actually really love. I think it's kind of frightening and kind of cool. I really, really like it. What baffles me a bit, Wonder Woman ultimately seeming they have their fight and it goes pretty well. The action scenes in this movie actually work pretty well. She does some really cool stuff with her lasso. Um she does some cool stuff with her lasso, said the heavily scrutinizing movie critic. I don't know, man. Diana and Cheetah fight, and it's pretty cool, but it's short. It's a short fight and just ends in Wonder Woman electrocuting her in a big thing of water when she refuses to renounce her wish. And it's unclear. I think they leave it intentionally ambiguous as to if she survives this or not. But I'm kind of leaning that it wouldn't really matter because if I understand correctly, everyone renounces their wishes. Maxwell Lord is coerced into renouncing his own wish and to stop being the wishing rock. Meaning, I think if she did survive, she would still turn back into normal Barbara. Um, which is weird to me. I thought they would find some way to keep her powers so she could join the Legion of Doom, because we know we have Lex Luthor and Deathstroke teaming up, and Savannah and Mr. Mind teamed up in the post credits of Shazam. So like, and Cheetah tends to be a pretty consistent fixture of the Legion. So it really surprised me we didn't have any follow up of her getting picked up. Even if I guess it would be lots of years later would be one thing. She'd be significantly older. They could all. It just leaves me wondering, like, are we gonna see her again? Is she just dead after all? Is maybe they'll bring in Priscilla Rich, who's the other character who's become the cheetah. I think through more scientific means than magic. So maybe we'll see something like that. I guess we'll just have to see. It's disappointing how little of the Cheetah we get. Barbara is pretty prominent throughout the film. I wish we saw more actively villainous Cheetah who's fighting Diana because she wants to keep her wish intact. I think that's a real shit because the real climax again comes down to Diana talking Maxwell Lord down from his status as wish god, and Maxwell Lord's like, "Oh no, I have a son." Because of course he does. Of course the slimy DC businessman has to have a son to humanize him. And he's like, okay, I'll do it for my son. And he gets to live and just reunite with his son. So the honestly way better and way more iconic and way more sympathetic villain in Cheetah gets electrocuted like like a goldfish that I dropped a toaster into the bowl of. But oh, Maxwell Lord gets to reunite with his son. This movie, man. And it's like I feel like DC looks at how Marvel handles their villains and tends to be like, okay, people tend to complain that their villains aren't very well developed in a lot of their movies. Not saying all of them, but that's kind of another discussion. So what if we gave our villains entire subplots to make them really, really sympathetic and really, really built up? And I think that kind of works, but it also just begs the question, at what point I feel like there's a difference between a villain who feels like the protagonist of their own story within the protagonist's story and a villain who has their own story that barely crosses with the protagonist until it's time for them to fight. And I kind of had that problem with Savannah and Shazam, and a little not. I haven't seen Aquaman in a while, but I remember just not being crazy about Ocean Master. I feel like DC is like shaking you to be like, you gotta like these villains, you gotta feel sympathy for them, which is why I liked Black Mask so much. They didn't pull that same stuff. I think that was just the perfect level of bad guy. He's present throughout, but it's not like we have entire 10-20 minute vignettes of him. Oh, he has a son and he has family issues the way that they do with Savannah and Ocean Master and Maxwell Lord of all people. Weirdly enough, it's just like it overpowers me a bit when they want you to like them so much. Um, and that's the problem I have with Maxwell Lord, is that he's not only so omnipresent and the camera's on him so much that it takes from Cheetah, who I think is much more applicable to Wonder Woman and just a much better character, but that he has that same problem where I'm kind of just sick of seeing him in this Wonder Woman movie so much. There's just entire chunks devoted to, oh, here's his complex with his son. Here's his problems with money. Here he's an immigrant and it's hard for him. It just gives me a toothache after a while. I think you can just, there's a good balance of making a villain sympathetic and possible to even side with without just like, just snow plowing you with how much they want you to like them. If I'm, I that probably sounds like such a strange complaint, But at a certain point, it's just like the villain should still be the villain. Like, I don't know who loved Maxwell Lord so much to give him this role in this movie so prominently. Oh gosh, I guess. And I think my big gripe with this movie as well, I feel like I've said that 3 times now, my one big gripe, and there's three of them. So maybe I didn't like this movie so much. It's called Wonder Woman 1984, and I barely remember it taking place in 1984. There's some fun wardrobe choices in that regard, and I think one sequence in a shopping mall and some of the paraphernalia around Maxwell Lord is very 1980s and his celebrity. But besides that, they don't use really any 80s music that I could recall, and they just don't really invoke that time period very well. And I'm reminded of Birds of Prey, which so good. I loved that movie. Invoked the character of its setting very, very well. I think kind of coming from Harley Quinn's point of view as a narrator really helped it. I think just some of the like this might be reductive, but some of the Scott Pilgrim-esque touches of how the fourth wall kind of breaks and how Harley interacts with the audience really, really helped that. I think Captain Marvel did like that one's based in the 90s, and that felt more like a 90s flavor, if you will. Even though that one was also pretty sparing. We had a fight to ska music, which is maybe the most 90s thing I can think of. There's nothing like that in this movie, and that's a little frustrating. The preview focused a ton on the mall scene, and that's like wasted as soon as it comes up. Like I said, there's some cool fashion choices, especially with Barbara. You get to see her 80s workout latex and big hair when she gets to be her more confident self, and those are really cool parts of the movie. But there's a part where Diana's like rescuing children in a kind of generic action scene, and it's just like the very generic orchestral superhero score, and I'm like, and I guess I don't really know what else you would use in that place, but I was just like, I've completely forgotten this is the 80s at this point. Just nothing about it feels that way to me. And that, in conjunction with this story not feeling significant to Diana, um, and not feeling fitting to Diana, just makes me be like, so, okay, well, that was definitely a movie. So that's Wonder Woman 1984. I think I hit all the big check marks. Not terrible, but honestly, I was kind of disappointed in it. I just did not love it because I really like the first Wonder Woman. I feel bad. I don't want the DCEU to be bad or anything. I'm just consistently kind of like even Shazam, which I see people cloying for. I kind of just don't, and I really should love that movie, honestly. It hits a lot of hallmarks I really like for superhero media. For some reason, it just did not click. I think there's just something with the pacing of the DCEU storytelling that's so transparent that it gets a little like I'm like, okay, I can tell exactly what they want to do with the villain. I can tell whether like, oh, we're gonna have a big meeting about where to inject the humor right in. In a way that really, I think so far only Birds of Prey and the first Wonder Woman have felt very genuine to me because those didn't feel like they were trying super hard. Which some people might argue with me. I just I just think, I'm coming down on the DCEU a lot when I don't want to. I'm not trying to be that guy. Because I love those characters. I don't want to say I love Slow down, reel it back. I don't want to be caught on record saying I love the DCEU characters. I love those superheroes in a vacuum, and I want these to be good versions of them. Something's just not quite hitting. And I wonder if the less I say pretentious in the meaning of the word, not of like, but of like these characters have a lot of legacy and they can be a little more irreverent. I think the Suicide Squad is gonna be pretty a little more what I'm looking for because that'll be more like I feel like that'll be more like Birds of Prey, where it'll have that wiggle room to be just a little more genuine and not as here's going to be the villain backstory. We need that. And here's going to be the slapstick humor. We need that. In a way that just makes it feel very prepackaged. I don't know if I'm making sense here. I'm kind of rambling. That's the mission debrief for you. Hope you enjoyed that. This'll probably be that's probably the biggest holiday movie. I watched Soul as well. I like that fine. I kind of want to watch The Wolf Walkers. I don't know how many people care about that. I don't know if that's gonna get like a whole video or what. I'm hoping to have a really fun video out on New Year's Eve. Got a couple projects in the chamber coming out. Yeah, so that's kind of my big New Year's update. Keep an eye out for that. Hopefully, knock on wood, I'll be able to get that video out New Year's Eve. I don't see any problem with me getting it out by then, but make plans, God laughs, so we'll see. All right, well, this has been Striker Star 19. Hope you enjoyed this mission debrief. Have a wonderful new year.